Hello and welcome to the Love History podcast, where we explore what happens when an LGBTQ plus historian and a mudlark chat to their friends about a shared love of history. I'm Mock and I'm known on socials, TikTok, Instagram and YouTube as Gay Aristo.
And I'm Marie-Louise Plum, and you can find me on all the socials as Old Father Thames. So in this podcast, we chat to fellow history lovers, people working in history, and some people who are making history themselves.
Yeah, so sit back and relax, get your beverage of choice, and welcome to the Love History podcast. And do remember to subscribe and follow to make sure that you hear all of the episodes in series 1. Now, Marie, Old Father Thames, what have you been up to recently, historically speaking?
Well, actually, I'm just looking at some news coming into my phone right now from a group of mudlarks who are currently at a canal clearing. There's a drainage going on of a canal in London, and I'm looking at what they've been finding. So, historically, well, I guess it's kind of early 20th century onwards. I think someone's found a sort of box brownie for a camera. A gun has been retrieved,
Wow.
and lots of votive offerings that people of different religions throw into water, like rivers, lakes, canals, while making an offering to a deity. So yeah, seeing it's minute by minute, it's happening now. And how about you? What have you been up to, Mock, historically speaking?
Historically speaking, so as you know, I'm doing a PhD currently in the country house as a place of refuge for LGBTQ plus people. And I'm very excited because there is the first ever postgraduate country house studies meeting. So people who are taking it to either master's or post PhD level. We're having a conference, or there is a conference in March, and I have been asked to put forward a paper to be a speaker and to chair a panel, which I'm really excited about. It makes me feel like a real historian, not just a Pinocchio one. And so I'm looking forward to that in March, and I'm just prepping my paper now because I have to submit it by the end of the week.
That sounds fantastic. Well, so what have we got on today's episode, Mark?
So today's episode is going to be absolutely fascinating because it's all about you and your mudlarking adventures. Yes, I've got lots and lots of questions for you about your YouTube, about your time on the foreshore, your particular angle on being a mudlark and how you connect it with history. But as well as my questions for you, if anyone has any questions for us or questions about history in general, we would love to hear from you. So please do get in touch on email at lovehistorypodcast@gmail.com. But before that, let's sit back, let's relax, and let's hear all about you. And then we'll come back together at the end and we'll have a chat about what we've learned from our conversation.
Fantastic. Well, I'm ready for these questions, so let's get into it.
Hello, Old Father Thames. Rather interesting. I'm going to be interviewing you now. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you. I'm excited, intrigued. I'm in the hot seat, so yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, you are indeed. And you are definitely in for a ride, dear listeners. So we met originally on socials, didn't we? We met, I think it was on Instagram. You were posting posting on the foreshore about being a mudlark. So before we get into all the questions that I have to ask you and some questions that have been sent into lovehistorypodcast@gmail.com, thank you for those questions. Can you just explain to those who don't know, what is a mudlark?
Very simply, I search the riverbed, the foreshore of the River Thames when the tide is out, and I'm looking for interesting artifacts from history. So either with significant historical value, so sort of over 300 years in age, or just curious, interesting things to do with social history right up to the modern day. So it's really, we're looking at prehistory to the modern day. And with these finds, I have them recorded. If they are special, important anyway, they're recorded at the Museum of London. The finds get recorded eventually onto the British Museum's Portable Antiquities Scheme. And the reason we're doing this is to keep building on that rich tapestry of London's history. So we're just trying to put pieces together in the puzzle of London and global history, in fact.
Because you're not, Mudlark king. We'll come to that in a second. But being a mudlark isn't anything new. You and your kind have existed throughout history. What's kind of history of mudlarks?
Okay, so the history of mudlarks is actually rather different. So we do this as a pastime. It gets thrown in with amateur archaeology. Historically, mudlarks were river scavengers who would search for items with some kind of saleable value. So copper, bits of old rope, wood, various things that they could then sell on for some money. So it was, they were really earning their bread and butter.
Riverside scavengers.
Riverside scavengers, along with, you think if there were sewer scavengers that were nicknamed toshers. Actually, it's really interesting. One of the first, I think the first person to talk about mudlarks was a guy called Patrick Colquhoun, who did a survey of the Port of London. And he was instructed to do this survey because there was just so much theft going on. And he was trying to find ways to stop the theft. And he identified mudlarks and names them mudlarks as being people who worked in a network, a criminal kind of network. They were a cog in the wheel of this gang who would work with other elements to hang out by large ships and receive bits of cargo thrown over the sides, like a rum bottle or whatever. Someone working above on the ship would chuck one of these over. The mudlark would take it, squirrel it away somewhere, or give it to a fence or whatever, to sell on. So actually, the original Colquhoun's original mudlarks were criminals. They were thieves. That was the end of the 18th century. So the very end of the 18th century, this was written. Mm-hmm. Now, in the early to mid 19th century, this name mudlarks was picked up as well by Dickens, Henry Mayhew, who did a survey of London's poor, street sellers, etc. And then the view of mudlarks changed slightly in that they were these ragged, shoeless people scavenging to make money. So more out of necessity than criminality. But we know before Colquhoun, before all of this, people were searching the river for items to sell on. For whatever reason, and they were called different things, river dredgers, shorers, shore pickers, all sorts of things. Shorers is one name that another mudlark, Malcolm Russell, has managed to find a reference to in one of the old Bailey archives. So that's really interesting. Wow. Putting back that mudlark reference years before Colquhoun. So yeah.
They descended from smugglers and now doing it for love and for adventure. And you're not alone. There's a whole community of mudlarks out there, aren't there?
Goodness me, yes. So when I started mudlarking close to around 10 years ago, there were about two. So we all have a license to mudlark. You need a license to mudlark on the River Thames.
You can't just turn up on a Wednesday morning and go out and say, I'm a mudlark. You need to get a license. And are they easily available? Are they freely available?
Well, at the moment, no. And this ties into, what I was saying a second ago. When I started, there were about 200 licenses issued by the Port of London Authority. Mm-hmm. The final count, I think, the last count I heard was last year. There are just over 5,000 permits issued.
Wow.
So, yeah, and actually now the Port of London Authority have currently, for the last year, have paused issuing any new permits. So at the moment, if you don't have a permit, you can't get one, you can't go and mudlark. The wording on the Port of London Authority T's and C's is you cannot, if you have the intention of searching the foreshore in any way, you need a permit. So, yeah, I'm afraid, hopefully this year, I've got a feeling, I feel it in my bones that this year maybe there will be a bit of a reprieve and mudlarks permits will be issued again. I don't have any actual news on that, but yeah.
Okay, super. So we know you're a mudlark, and I want to ask you that I've heard about going for a lark. We talked to Alessio in a previous episode, so do check that out. He also is a mudlark. He talks about night larks, which I loved as well. Do you go mudlarking or do you not go mudlarking? And are you mudlarkers? Tell me a little bit about the vocabulary, because people are a little bit sensitive about the terms, aren't they?
Well, I just think so. What this all stems from is there's an old school and there's a new school. And it's like with any hobby you have, there are people who've been doing it for a long time. A lot of people who taught me how to mudlark, and I do go mudlarking, by the way, so I go mudlarking. Um, People who taught me how to mudlark and took me under their wing and taught me pretty much everything I know about how to mudlark are mudlarks of what, like 40 years standing. They were there when the right to mudlark, um, when an agreement was founded with the Port of London Authority giving us a right to mudlark, being able to get these permits to go and mudlark. Now, this old school, who I'm very much embedded with, that are my friends, and the kind of new school, who are also my friends, don't always, it's not always seeing eye to eye. I mean, I think there's this thing of I don't know what the word is, formalizing a lot of mudlarking stuff. Navel gazing about historical life, which I love. I love all this stuff. I think the old school are kind of like Bosch. They get out there, they do it, they find amazing finds. Here they are. They have collections in museums. Then you've got new people who are musing on mudlarking, what it is, what the river does, all this kind of. So there's the difference. Now with mudlarks and mudlarkers, we're mudlarks. It's kind of adding the on is sort of superfluous because we are mudlarks, we're not mudlarkers. However, lots and lots of new mudlarks do refer to themselves as mudlarkers. They're mudlarkers. So, I mean, I will always call myself a mudlark, not a mudlarker. But I don't know, whatever. It's people say mudlarker and mudlark now, so it's fine. But yeah, I think people in hobbies that are niche, whether it's metal detecting, stamp collecting, coin clubs, whatever it is, it can get a bit testy. And, there are lots of differing opinions.
So tell me, not everyone is drawn to the foreshore or finds themselves there on a Thursday, suited and booted with knee pads. How on earth did you get into being a mudlark?
Really basic answer is I have a really inquiring mind. I am quite nosy and I like to know where we came from, who we were, what we did. I like old historic things in general anyway. I think it's a bit of a hangover for not I liked history at school, but I didn't really enjoy school. So that's carried through my later life where now I really enjoy learning. I enjoy, antique bookshops, junk shops, flea markets, all that kind of stuff. I like family history, genealogy, and so it was just a natural progression that I saw. I saw my friend said, should we go down to the river and see what's down there? And that was the first thing. Then I began to research what this thing is, found out it had a name, mudlarking. And then I found a group called Thames and Field, who I'm still a part of, and Steve Brooker, head of that group, who is known as Mud God. He had a series on the History Channel. So yeah, he had a mudlarking series. Steve really taught me everything I knew about the river. I know now about the river, and so that's how I started. And that was almost 10 years ago. And now I am one of the 52 mudlarks in the Society of Thames Mudlarks. So there's only ever, well, I think it's 50 members now. There's only ever 50 members. And you have to be invited in. And I am one of those people. So it's really exciting.
Yeah, I love the idea of a mud god. Can you be a mud goddess? Are you allowed to kind of take that mantle on yourself?
I'm generally known as plumbers. So
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know if I could. I mean, everybody's got names. It's wonderful. It's like this, old kind of East End nicknames for what are like Jack the Hat or whatever. So everybody has names. Mine is plumbers.
You said it East End nicknames. I immediately thought of public school where everyone kind of had their nicknames. I was O'Keefe Minor
What?
because I had an older.
Oh, keep minor. There was a major and a minor. Oh, it's exactly. It's nice. It's that kind of camaraderie, that sort of. Yes, we all have nicknames. There's Rock, who's Rock God, because he, had the best finds on rocks. Mud God is Mud God because mud finds. Got lots of cuffs because he finds lots of cufflinks. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
So now we've heard about all of the gods and fellow mudlarks that you hang out with. I'd love to take you down to the foreshore, take you back to your own experience on the foreshore. And can you tell us, out of all your finds over the last 10 years, what for you has been the most exciting? The one when you went, oh, my goodness, is it? It is.
Pilgrim's badge. I have a pilgrim's badge that would have been purchased at the end of a pilgrimage in Rome. It's a Veronica. It's the Veil of Veronica, and so someone does a pilgrim from presumably London to Rome, wherever it was, Canterbury to Rome. And yeah, at the end, it's this real exit through the gift shop thing where you buy a pilgrim's badge to attach to your staff or your hat or what have you. And they're made out of lead. It dates from 1400 to 1500. That's a pretty special find. It's almost intact apart from the back pin. There, oh gosh, there's so many. A pinner's bone, I have to say that very precisely and slowly. Pinner's bone. It is usually a cow or a horse bone that was used as a tool. Pin makers, pinners would file down wire to sharpen bits of wire into pin to sell. So pins were big business. And so finally, after about 7 years of searching, I found a pinner's bone. And, it's just, they're so tactile. I love bone finds. And obviously we use bone a lot, right, where today we'd use plastic or metal or what have you. So we use bone so much. And this was the tool, one of the tools of somebody's trade. It'd be so important to them. And it's been in their workshop, and once it's seen, it's been there present with conversations happening. And, so that was fantastic. And finally, I'll tell you another one. I have a really beautiful collection of trade beads, which have quite a large date span. They were often made in Venice. There was a bead maker in London who had a studio in Hammersmith, but they were used to guarantee your safe passage across seas. So they were essentially money. They were currency. They were used for lots of things. Beautiful glass beads with lots of decoration, very highly coloured and decorated. They were used for lots of things. So safe passage, spices, materials, all sorts of things, but also, quite grimly, they were an important piece of currency in the transatlantic slave trade.
Ooh.
So there's a bead historian that refers to them as silent witnesses of history because they are such beautiful, pretty things, but they're being used often to buy humans, to buy slaves, to buy enslaved people. So yeah, they're the finds that leave impressions.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you talked about bones there, and I know shortly after we met, your first kind of video went viral on TikTok at Old Father Thames, and it was about bones. Can you tell us a little bit about that video? Because it's absolutely insane, the response, and where you were. Obviously, you won't give away the secret location, but where you were, well, you tell us what was there and what happened.
Okay, so I know the video you're talking about. There are lots and lots of bones on the River Thames foreshore for various reasons. Don't forget that the Thames, for many, many years, hundreds of years, was used as a large, a large dump. It was people chucked their rubbish away into the Thames. Now, the particular video you're talking about, there is a spot on the foreshore that is littered in hundreds and thousands of bones. It is almost like a bone beach. And this comes from abattoirs fairly recent history, and tanneries as well, when they were all moved out of so this is east. We're going east down the river. And this kind of bone beach is the product of thousands of animals being slaughtered for food, for leather, for different goods. So that's where they all come from. The video was a bit special because when people were watching it, they're like, oh, they've got to be human bones. These are all but they had loads of conspiracy theories like these are all the bones that were used from the children of blah, blah. Really far-fetched conspiracy theories, but no, they're animal bones, and they are just a product of the working foreshore next to the river. So
if people want to see you on socials and to check out that video, just remind us where they can find you on social media.
It's Old Father Thames on Instagram and YouTube, and on TikTok it's Old Father Thames Mudlark.
Super. Okay, lovely. Now, obviously, it's limited the amount of people that can now go out and be a mudlark, and you very generously and your other mudlark colleagues share on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. But you also get involved with events, don't you, where you share your finds with the general public? Because we made a YouTube video there. So tell us a little bit around what you do there and why it's important to you to share your finds with the general public like me.
Okay, so I am one part of a trio. So I'm one third of a trio of mudlarks. Me, Monica Butling Smith, who is Muddica Thames, and Jason Sandy, who is Jason Mudlark. We are together as a group called HandsOn History, and we facilitate mudlarking talks, workshops, exhibitions at really good historical venues like St Paul's Cathedral, the Roman Amphitheatre in London, and then at national museums like the National Maritime Museum. We get the whole community together and do these big displays of hundreds of thousands of mudlarking finds, and so lots of different mudlarks take part. Now, the important thing here is that we find so much from the river, and while a lot of it is recorded, and you can view this online at the Portable Antiquities Scheme database, we don't our collections are at home in chests and drawers and all sorts of things. So the conversation is, we're finding this history. Who are the history keepers and who should be allowed to see this stuff? It's at a weird level where some things for sure will be museums will ask to display them. Really, really amazing finds they have to be. Otherwise, they'll have multiples. It's like, collecting sticker cards. It's like got, want. Museums often have a duplicate of what we find. And because these finds are important, but perhaps not important enough to display in a national museum, because their version will be in storage. It's really important for us to share this missing bit of everyday history that people can get their hands on and touch. Lots of us allow people to handle the items, ask lots of questions. It's generally, so we've got one coming up. Actually, I don't know if this will go out before or after, but there's a Waterman's Hall exhibition. So that's one of the livery guilds in London. Then in the summer, we'll have lots of exhibitions as part of Totally Thames. So look out for those.
Yeah, fantastic. Lovely. Super. And, you talked about you have these at home in your chests, in your drawers, etc., or they're in museums. But are you allowed to keep everything you find? Are there any rules or regulations about when you have to give something up to an authority? And how does that work?
Yes, right. So here's the news. Everything we find technically is not owned by us. It still belongs to the Port of London Authority. We are simply guardians of what we find. It's highly unlikely, but if they ever said, "Oh, you found a piece of pottery, we want it back," then we'd have to give it back. But actually, we are allowed to keep it, yes. But now there is a special case. If you're lucky enough to find a piece of history that falls under the Treasure Act, so a precious metal over 300 years of age, and if it's coins, it has to be a hoard, like more than 2 coins, then that find has to be declared and go off to the coroner's office, where it usually gets held up there about a year maybe, and the coroner inspects it, and then what happens after that is complicated and complex. But even with treasure, yes, you can have it back. It's a complicated process, but in general, yes, we get to keep everything.
Wow, fantastic. Okay, super. Well, I've asked you lots and lots and lots of questions, but we have had some questions into lovehistorypodcast@gmail.com. So if you're all right, I'm going to ask you the questions that have come in. That's me shuffling my papers very efficiently there. So we've had a couple from Jonathan, and I have to say, I love the first one. I think it's just beautiful and so respectful. Has the Lady Mudlark ever found anything related to Roman London? So, Lady Mudlark, please reply.
Jonathan, thank you so much for your lovely question. So, Roman London, yes, lots of bits, nothing amazing. I mean, lots of tile related finds, so roof tiles, which were a particular they were made in a particular way, as in the shape of them, imbrex and tegular roof tiles, which we still to this day use this system on our roofs, which waterproof, so they're tiles that fit together, and then there's a little cap that go over the two joins, and it's this wonderful, marvelous Roman invention. So yes, tegular. I find lots of bits of pottery. You find bits of Roman glass, hairpins. There are some people who concentrate on Roman history and have found amazing stuff.
Okay, another question from Jonathan before we move on, because we have several for you. Have any of your finds ever been shown at the Museum of London?
Right, there's it. So no, I am not in any permanent collection at the Museum of London. However, I have shown my finds at the Museum of London in a temporary way. So the museum haven't asked for me to hand anything over to them to keep, but I have exhibited at the Museum of London Docklands. So yeah, that's the answer. There are a number of mudlarks from about 40 years ago, 30 years ago, who have made up a significant part of some of the Museum of London's collection, buttons being one, pilgrims badges, toys, little metal toys. So, but me, no.
Only temporarily. Okay, we have another question here from Liz Fennick, who is a fan of the podcast. She's a romantic novelist, and she's written it into me, and she has a question for you. Dear at Old Father Thames, do you feel history when you touch the past with your hands? Can you almost see the past?
Hi, Liz, and thank you so much for that question. It is a brilliant question because this is exactly what I do as a tide travelling mudlark. When you pick up a find from the River Thames, because it has been preserved in that anaerobic mud, so air-free mud on the Thames is what keeps these artefacts safe for thousands, hundreds, thousands of years. And when you touch it, you are very likely the first person in however many years, 400, let's say 2000, whatever it is, to touch the item. And you are transported to that time period for sure. I also have this weird thing that I do, which is almost like activating a lens that comes down over my eyes, and both when I'm on the foreshore and when I'm walking through London, particularly older parts of London that still have old features, I can almost see I'm there in the 1800s or whatever period it is, Tudor London. It's a really fascinating thing to be able to do, and I love it. So yes, I do travel in time that way.
This isn't a question from Liz, it's a question from me, just thinking of that. Is there, bearing in mind that you have this kind of historical filter, almost like your own personal historical Photoshop, is there a particular time in history that you would love to have lived in, ignoring things like sanitation and healthcare? Is there a particular time in history that you would love to have lived in?
Oh gosh, there are loads. It changes. I think mostly Tudor London probably is a biggie. Regency Georgian London again is a biggie. And even now, I mean, some people cast off Victorian London as being too modern. But there are, Victorian London for me at the moment, especially going around some places in the city and around Westminster, and especially where there used to be rookeries and slums. And slums of London, you can still kind of bring that vision back. So okay, that wouldn't have been such a comfortable place to live in a slum, no, but yeah, I mean, okay, so Tudor, Regency, Victorian.
And if you see a slum, you want to be driving past in your carriage with a handkerchief to your nose.
Yes, with your vinaigrette or your pomander.
Your pomander.
I know.
Oh well, listen, I could talk to you for hours. And I frequently do. We'll pause it there, and then rather strangely, we will then come back and we will say, what have we learned from chatting to each other today? That was absolutely fascinating. Thank you. Oh, well, that was fun. Did you enjoy it?
I did. Who knew I loved talking about myself? No, it was really good. It was really fun.
I've obviously known you for a long time now, and I watch you on all of your socials, but I learned something new from that. I did not know that the items that you find on the foreshore technically are still owned by the Port of London Authority, and they could ask them back anytime. I had no idea. I knew about kind of the Treasury Act, because sometimes that's found on, common land or national trust land, etc. But the idea that they could say, that pilgrimage badge that you are so proud of, they could ask for it back.
Yeah, I mean, technically they could. I doubt they ever would. But yeah, you just got to bear that in mind, that it's not actually yours. It's kind of transient. And yeah.
You're almost like a custodian, aren't you, really?
Precisely, exactly. I'm a custodian of this history, these objects. So it's important that I tell the stories of them, exactly.
I know it might be a bit odd, but listening to yourself and reflecting with the questions from our lovely listeners who emailed in on lovehistorypodcast@gmail.com, did you learn anything about yourself or mudlarking?
Yes, I mean, I think the thing is, it's a bit of a corny one actually, but I just learned that I am doing the right thing. In that this is my, I'm an artist as well, but this is really makes up most of what I do, writing about mudlarking, writing about finds. I don't have a degree in history or archaeology, but what I'm discovering and sharing is still valid, and I'm glad that I still speak about it passionately, because that it's the thing that I love. So that's really what I learned today.
And that comes through your love of it and your passion. And for me, okay, I'm a historian, but I'm not history of the foreshore or the Thames or anything like that. You also present it in a really easily understandable way on all of your socials. So if you haven't followed Old Father Thames, go and do it immediately this podcast ends. But that's it for today. So what's happening next week?
Well, next week, you're in the hot seat. We have got Mock as our special guest, and I'm going to be asking you all about life in a baby castle as a lord, no less, your PhD studies, hidden histories, LGBTQ plus histories, and why it's so important to share them, and why the work you're doing is so essential. So that is us next week.
Okay, I can't wait. I'm slightly nervous, but I'll see you then.
See you then.